Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulika al-Kareem. Those who read the invitation must have noticed that the first line was in gratitude and remembrance. Gratitude is shukr in Arabic and remembrance is zikr. And the idea of Sakinah Circle grew out of a global reality of Muslims having fallen asleep back in the 17th century. And after 300 years of sleep, when they woke up, the world had changed. And the world had changed to such an extent that they became strangers and they didn't know how to function in a world that had transformed in the 300 years of when they were asleep. And then they woke up and they said, who are we? What are we doing here? What kind of education are we going to have for our children? Where are we going? For the Muslim Education Foundation, the idea of reaching out to Alberta Public Schools to initiate a program of learning that delivers Alberta Program of Studies from the Quranic worldview was in that big global perspective, a small, real practical step for the community here in this city, in this province, in this country. And when, thanks to the receptivity we had in the district, Gloria and her colleagues, a 295-page document over a year was made, which was called Enduring Understandings. But to be honest, right up to this day, I don't think people understand. Many people don't understand what does it mean to say Sakinah Circle delivers Alberta Program of Studies from the Quranic worldview. What is that? What in reality does it mean? So the evolution, development of this program is an answer to that question. It means that we are preparing this next generation of students and children in this country to carry a tradition of learning that goes back to the 1400 years of Islamic history. That means that we are opening these small windows in their minds and in their hearts to understand who are they, what are they doing here, what is the purpose of their being. While we are teaching Alberta Program of Studies, we are also teaching them a process of learning that awakens in them questions. Questions about the big questions for their own self and for the cosmos and the world in which they live. Therefore, we said this program is nature-focused. It is historically rooted and it is service-oriented. These are the three fundamentals, Glenn, you remember when we first met. What does it mean to be historically rooted? It means that there is a continuity in human history right from day one. When we came to this world, and our understanding is that we came to this world, we didn't evolve from a common soup. We came to this world and that began the human story. So when we say that we are part of the human story, we mean that these children growing up in this city, in this place, in this Alberta, in this country, they're also part of the global human community. And we want to give them the tools and the means by which they can actually function in this world in the 21st century, but still be rooted in a specific form, in a specific tradition that is rooted in the Quran. So the Quranic worldview is that all human beings have been created on fitrah, which is the primordial disposition, and we all establish a covenant with God, with our Creator, in pre-eternity. That covenant means that this is a different vision of life and living as opposed to what we receive from the Greek tradition. Aristotle said that every child is just blank, tabula rasa. You can write anything on it. We say no, and this is a very important point. We are not born, children are not born as a blank sheet. They have an imprint on them, alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And apparently we forget about it. This is a covenant we established in pre-eternity, before we were born. Now, the idea that every child is born upon fitra, in purity, means that there is a possibility of returning to that purity, and that is through education. So when we say this program delivers the Alberta Program of Studies from the Quranic worldview, we are saying that we are nurturing that inherent goodness, that quality of being innocent, being pure, and being in tune with three aspects of our being. Number one, and these are not in hierarchical order, but the nature is the first thing. When in a particular situation, Alberta Program of Studies says, teach children properties of liquids, hot and cold. We say yes, we are going to do that, but we are going to do that out in the nature as well, in addition to being in the classroom. And we are going to teach them also that this water that you are going to drink has a very specific quality that no other molecule has in the entirety of this cosmos. Where does it come from? Why does water freeze at 0 degrees and boil at 100 degrees? This is what the Alberta Program of Studies asks us to teach. But we are also going to teach them that back in the 11th century, two Muslim scientists were asking the same question. Why does ice float on water, they say. This is Abu Rehan al-Biruni and Ibn Sina. Why does ice float on water? We all see this happening. But they are investigating the structure of the water molecule way back then. Without the tools that we have now, we have wonderful tools to study the structure of water molecule. But the deeper question they were asking, and we still want our children to ask, just think about it, if water did not float on, if ice did not float on water, what would happen to the oceans in winter? What would happen to the marine life? How would the process of regeneration happen if everything died in winter? Where does this come from? Where does this very specific form, quality of the most important molecule in the world, water, come from? Why? So we are opening these minds and we are bringing this historicity to it because scientific tradition is a continuity. We had 800 years of Islamic science before the modern science began. Before that we had the Greek science, we had the Roman science, we had the Indian science. They need to grow deep roots into that history. Number two, their own self. These children, if you look at them, they are coming from other places. Most of them are coming from other places. But those places are gone. They're not going anywhere. They're going to live in this country. What is their concept of nations, states, countries? What does the Quran tell us? We don't believe in this demarcation of this is my country and this is your country. The earth belongs to the entire humanity, and all the problems that we are seeing now is because of that distortion that has happened over time. Oh, this is my country and you cannot come here, and this is your country and I have to get this. Of course we have to have administrative controls, but the concept of earth, the entire planet, being the residence of all human beings means that we are all going to be khalifa, khulafa, caretakers of this whole planet together. Because you cannot protect one place of this earth while destroying the other. It's impossible, it's physically impossible. What happens hundreds of miles away affects us. Air quality, radioactivity, what we did in Baghdad, in Iraq, all of these things. And so we want our children to grow this global perspective while they are citizens of a local place. Because of course we have to have those administrative controls. We are not abolishing them. But This is, now the third and the last thing is the service oriented. I was, this morning, I was thinking of Al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmi was, as his name shows us, he came from Central America. Back in the day, he came to Baghdad. Baghdad was the center of the universe at that time in the 11th century. He gave us something amazing. He wrote a book called Al-Jabr wal-Maqal. Algebra, the word algebra comes from that, algebra. Back then, they used Roman numerals. And those who use Roman numerals know that if you have to write 136, what do you do? 136, these are letters. So what is this? We need to have numbers, we need to have notations, which people can use to say number, this shape stands for number 9, this shape stands for number 3. These shapes were present in the Indian mathematics. He took them, but there was one problem. The problem was that there was no null space in the conceptual understanding of numbers. There was no zero. This person says, wait a minute, there has to be something called sifr, zero. That would add, if you add 0 to 1, it gives us 10. If you add one more 0, it gives us 100. If you add one more, it gives us 1,000. This was a fundamental shift in our conceptual understanding of numbers. We want to teach our children, where does this cipher come from? Where does algebra come from? And the point I was going to mention of service orientation, in the introduction of Algebra, his book Al-Jabr wal-Maqal, he says, what do people have to do with numbers? Oh, they have to calculate their inheritance. And they have business transactions. So I thought I will just write a book that will simplify these transactions so there is ease in people's life. Look at this scientist. He's writing a book on mathematics, but he's thinking of the community, of people. He wants to make their life easy. And this was throughout our tradition. So these are some of the elements which make the Quranic worldview as it manifested itself in real time, in real history. And if these children are rooted in that tradition, they will be a great asset anywhere in the world, not just this country, but anywhere in the world, because now these are not just free radicals floating around, they are deeply rooted. This tree is not just flimsy tree anymore. They have a history, they have a place in history, and they have relationships with the community in which they are growing. I'll just give one more example. We want to be authentic. Sakinah Circle, one of the challenges we have, because now we have downloaded everything. Downloaded Islam, downloaded science, downloaded everything. We have no way of saying what is authentic and what is not authentic. This is one of the most important things, because if you have gold, like if you have pure gold, 1 kilo of pure gold, and then you mix half a kilo of false gold, and then you say, oh, I have 1.5 kilo of gold, you have devalued your gold. You don't have 1.5 kilo of gold. You only had 1 kilo, but now you are claiming, so what, by claiming that, you have devalued your other gold. We want to remain within the limits of authenticity and history. By we, I mean the Islamic tradition. We fell asleep. We are waking up now after 300 years of sleep, which means that we are discovering, and we want our children to discover, that there is a fundamental thing called heat and temperature. Al-Biruni, he actually took a pot of honey and a pot of water, and he heated both of them to 50 degrees temperature. And then he dips his finger in one pot and he dips his finger in the second pot. And he says, my finger heat in honey more than in water. That means honey has something inherently different because the temperature is the same, 50 degrees, 50 degrees. But the amount of heat in honey is far greater than the amount of heat in water. That means there is something called specific heat of each substance. Now, this is a fundamental concept in physics. Heat and temperature are two different and distinct properties of a liquid. When Alberta Program of Studies asks us to teach our children properties of liquids, heat and cold, we want to bring this in, that this fundamental distinction that centuries later, somebody would say, oh, I can make a thermocouple with copper because copper expands very quickly. That would start my furnace. A thermocouple, you see this thermocouple in every place now. We don't want to claim that Muslims invented thermocouple. That would be adding false gold to our pure gold. Our pure gold is that each substance has a specific heat. Each substance has a specific property. This comes from Al-Biruni. He didn't invent thermocouple. So the person who invented thermocouple used that principle. So we want to combine both of these and say, look, they didn't do this, but the principle was there. And somebody else came along and said, oh, now you can turn on your furnace with this thermocouple. So all of these things constitute what is this program trying to do. And this is really, I'm not bragging, this is really a unique effort. This is not a Muslim school. Sakinah Circle is not a Muslim, it's not supposed to be a Muslim program. It is supposed to be a program rooted in a philosophy of education that is very solid and anchored in the Quranic worldview. And this is the difference between this program and hundreds of other Muslim programs. Yes, it's good to have Muslim programs, but that is like being empty. There is no substance in that. Just, you put on your hat and you put on your abaya, but our tradition is not empty. It's full of substance of the deepest nature, in terms of human understanding, in terms of our understanding our relationship with the cosmos, with the Creator, with the community, and most of all with ourselves. So we want, inshallah, we are going to have 2 children. We want to see what they aspire to be when they graduate from Sakinah Circle. Thank you very much.